Does this one work? Yes. All right. It is Thursday, October 12th, 2023, and this meeting of the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission is called to order. May I have opening announcements, please?
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the District Court.
All right, thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Dool is absent. Ms. Foster?
Here.
McKay?
Here.
Green? Bill Johnson?
Here.
Blick?
Here.
Mr. Nix is absent. Fox?
Here.
Warren?
Here.
Joe Johnson?
Here.
Miles?
Present.
Mr. Zimbelman is absent. Mr. Aldrich?
Here.
And Mr. Williams Bay.
Here.
Chair, I show 11 present.
All right, we have a quorum and we will proceed. First item on the list is approval of the prior MAPC meeting minutes. We have not received them because they are so long, from the meeting being so long, that they've been deferred to October 26, 2023. We'll address them at that point. So the first thing we're going to do is go through the list of items on the agenda and see which ones we can take on consent and which ones we will hear in their entirety today. Item 2.1, subdivision 2023-00014 in the vicinity of 37th Street North and North 215th Street West. Does anyone on the commission want to hear that case? Does anyone here in the room from the public want to hear that case? Does anyone attending virtually want to hear this case? We'll take 2.1 on consent. Item 2.2, subdivision 2023-00031 in the vicinity of North 135th Street West and Central. the Bridger at Central Edition. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Seeing none, any members of the public here in the room want to hear this case? Any members of the public attending virtually want to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. Item 2.3, subdivision 2023-00039 in the vicinity of East 93rd Street North and North 63rd Street East in the county. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone in the room that's a member of the public want to hear this case? Anyone attending virtually want to hear this case? We'll take that on consent. Item 2.4, subdivision 2023-00040 in the vicinity of West 125th Street North and North 10th Street West, or Seneca Street. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Any member of the public in this room want to hear this case? Any member of the public attending virtually want to hear this case? We will take it on consent. Item 2.5, subdivision 2023-00041 in the vicinity of West 71st Street South and South 231st Street West. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Any member of the public in the room want to hear this case? Any member of the public attending virtually want to hear this case?
I move for approval of 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Joe Johnson and a second from Ann Fox to approve items 2.1 through 2.5 as per staff comments. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say no. Motion carries 11-0. All right, we'll move on to vacation items, which were also heard by the subdivision committee. Item 3.1, vacation 2023-00037 in the vicinity of South Dodge Avenue and West 44th Street South. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Any member of the public in the room want to hear this case? Any member of the public attending virtually want to hear this case? We'll take item 3.1 on consent. Item 3.2, vacation 2023-00038 in the vicinity of Harry and Clifton at 3802 East Harry. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone that's a member of the public in this room want to hear this case? Anyone attending virtually want to hear this case? We'll take 3.2 on consent. Item 3.3, vacation 2023-00039 in the vicinity of East Douglas and North Jackson Heights Street at 250 North Jackson Heights. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Any member of the public in the room want to hear this case? Any member of the public attending virtually want to hear this case?
Move that we approve items 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3.
Second.
I'll take that as a motion from Mr. Green, and was that Mr. Aldrich over here? Nope.
Okay.
Mr. McKay, sorry, Mr. McKay is the second to approve 3.1 through 3.3 per staff comments. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed say no. Motion carries 11-0. All right, now we'll go through the public hearing items for zoning and conditional use cases. Item 4.1, zoning 2023-00020 in the vicinity of Ridge and West 45th Street North has been deferred to November 9th, 2023, so we will skip that one. Item 4.2, conditional use 2023-00046, originally deferred from September 28th of this year in the vicinity of South 127th Street East and East 39th Street South. It's a request for an event center in the county. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Are there any members of the public in, Mr. Aldrich does? Oh, sorry. Speak up, Bob. I didn't see your hand move. That's all right. We will hear 4.2. Item 4.3, conditional use 2023-00048 in the vicinity of East 2nd Street North and Yale at 247 North Yale. It's a request for a detached accessory apartment. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Mr. Williams Bay wants to hear it. We will hear 4.3. Item 4.4, conditional use 2023-00049. Another request for an accessory apartment, this time in the vicinity of Central and Tyler at 357 North Westfield. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? All right, is there any member of the public in the room who would like to hear this case? Is there anyone attending virtually who would like to hear this case? We will take item 4.4 on consent. Item 4.5, a planned unit development 2023-09, an amendment to a PUD in the vicinity of West 135th Street and West 21st Street North. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Does any member of the public in the room want to hear this case? Does any member of the public attending virtually want to hear this case? We'll take item 4.5 on consent. Item 4.6 is a combination zoning case 2023-00052 and a community unit plan 2023-00030. It's for a vehicle storage yard in the vicinity of West Kellogg and South 167th Street West. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Is there any member of the public in this room who would like to hear this case? Is anyone attending virtually who would like to hear this case? All right, we will take 4.6 on consent. Item 4.7 is a zoning case 2023-00053 in the vicinity of South Kessler Street and West Angel Street. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Is there any member of the public here in attendance who would like to hear this case? Is anyone attending virtually who would like to hear this case? We will take 4.7 on consent. Item 4.8, zoning 2023-00054 is in the vicinity of Douglas and Oliver, changing from limited commercial to general commercial for a microbrewery. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Is there anyone in the room from the public who would like to hear this case? Is there anyone attending virtually who would like to hear this case? All right, we will take 4.8 on consent.
Make a motion to approve 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Blick and a second from Mr. Williams Bay to approve 4.4 through 4.8 for staff comments. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed say no. Motion carries 11-0. All right, before we move back and start hearing the cases, just for everyone's information, there is a non-public hearing item, a request in the city for the Stadium Hotel project plan, and I believe we are going to hear that one way or another, so we will now, yes, by then. I'm hurrying. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go back to item 4.2. Philip, you're up.
Yes, good afternoon, Planning Commission. Philip Zevenbergen with planning staff on behalf of Brad Etherly. Conditional use 2023-46 is a request in the county for an event center located at 3800 South 127th Street West. This also comes with a caveat that if it were to be approved, the applicant is requesting a waiver of a supplementary use regulation regarding a setback, but we'll get into those details in just a little bit. Paul, if you want to go to the aerial image, please. As I mentioned before, the request is for an event center in the county. The applicant resides at the property at the lot just south of the outbuilding that the proposed event center would be in. The applicant owns not only the property with their house, this lot with the outbuildings on it, but the other 4 lots around an unimproved street right-of-way that was platted. So all of this acreage is the applicant's property. The conditional use only applies to this lot in the red where the barn is located. They are looking to convert the barn, which used to be horse stables, into the event center. And this barn is approximately 790 feet north of the nearest residence. That would be one of these to the south here, and about 515 feet to the nearest residential property line. So it's a little over 500 feet to the property line, a little over almost 800 feet to the actual residence itself. This driveway right here is the applicant's driveway from 127th Street, which serves not only a house, but then the road up to the event center. Along the property line to the south is a landscaped berm that provides some screening as well as landscaping, just buffer from the applicant's property from the rear yards of the residential properties to the south. The applicant states that the events will generally occur indoors. However, ceremonies would be permitted to be outside of the proposed facility during restricted hours, and that no amplified music would be allowed to be played outside of the event space, but amplified music would be allowed to be played inside of the event space. Event centers in the county on property under 20 acres are required to have a conditional use, which is why we're hearing it today. They are also subject to supplementary use regulations found in section 3D6 and N. Those are attached into your staff report. We're going to hone in on item number 7, which requires a 100-foot setback from all property lines. The barn existed and functioned as a barn prior to the desire to create it to be an event center. It is approximately only 50 feet from the west property line, and so the applicant is requesting a waiver should the application be approved, because that was a pre-existing condition of the location of the barn. So if the MAPC does recommend approval today, part of your recommendation needs to include a waiver of that supplementary use regulation. That waiver can be granted by the governing body, but it requires a recommendation from this body first. The 127th Street is gravel. The driveway is gravel, which leads back to the barn. The site plan shows an area for parking, which would be a gravel parking lot. It did not include the total number of spaces. According to the supplementary use regulations, parking needs to be provided at 1 space per 4 occupants. Therefore, the applicant will have to determine what his occupancy is and provide sufficient parking, or his occupancy would be limited by the amount of parking he has. If it is approved, a revised site plan will be required in order to indicate the number of parking spaces. The surrounding area is rural scale residential. As we've talked about before, these residential lots to the south, all the properties to the west, south, and east are all zoned rural residential. You can see that these are obviously developed with residences. Property to the west is undeveloped. It's an agricultural field at this time. Property to the north is zone SF20, and it is undeveloped. And as we've talked about before, the property directly to the north and surrounding the event center on the east and the south are zoned rural residential, and they're owned by the applicant. Should the request be approved, one of the concerns that we always discuss within conditional uses in the county is the possibility of noise and light pollution. There are restrictions in the supplementary use regulations. However, the applicant provided conditions with the application that they were willing to adhere themselves to should the application be approved. One being maintaining the existing tree line and landscape bermed along the property's perimeter. Additional trees and plants would be added where necessary. Limiting the hours of operation of the rental facility, Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and on Friday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to midnight. And then restricting amplified music to the insulated indoor facility only. Therefore, no amplified music would be allowed outdoors. Regarding conformance to the comprehensive plan, the area is within a space that our comprehensive plan identifies as appropriate for agriculture or vacant. It identifies a pocket of low-density residential uses with a full range of without a full range of municipal service would likely develop in the area. We feel that the application is in conformance with the locational guidelines of our comprehensive plan, which suggests that residential and non-residential developed areas should be separated or to include buffering and screening as they transition in scale from non-residential uses to residential uses. Given the existing conditions on the site of the tree line on the west property and the landscape berm on the south, we feel that that is in compliance with the locational guidelines. The request, our staff is recommending approval of the request subject to the conditions in your staff report. Again, this recommendation comes with a recommendation for the waiver of supplementary use regulation number 7. The other conditions of approval are that the applicant would submit a site plan illustrating the assembly space, vehicle circulation, solid screening, ingress, egress, parking areas, dumpsters, landscaping, all the development and site standards on the site. They would have to receive all permits and licensing, compliance to the supplementary use regulations except for number 7, if it is waived. Specifically, the size of the event should be limited to the occupancy of the assembly space, with all events ending by 6 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and midnight Friday and Saturday. Amplified music shall be restricted to indoor event facility and will not be permitted outdoors. Guests shall not be permitted to loiter on the property following events. All guests must vacate the property within 30 minutes after the event ends, and hosts must vacate the property within an hour of the event ends. This is because the hosts live off-site. And then the last one is the standard, or the service of alcohol beverages or cereal malt beverage is permitted only with applicable licenses. And then the last one, the standard regulation that if there's a violation of the conditions, the zoning administrator may enforce zoning infraction remedies on the property. You can go through the site photos. This is kind of an oblique aerial view. Again, this is the driveway coming into the property off 127th Street. This is the applicant's home. This is the location of the proposed event center. Here's the south property line. You can see the landscape berm here. These are the rear yards of some of the residential properties. This is all the property that is owned by the applicant. Next picture. This is looking north at the event space. Next picture. This is looking north and east at other outbuildings on the property. Next picture. This is looking to the northwest. There's a tree line along the west property line. Next picture. This is looking to the west as well. Next picture. This is looking south. This is the gravel drive coming up from the applicant's house. Next picture. This is the landscape berm along the driveway separating the applicant's property from the rear yards of the residential property south. Next picture. This is looking west. This is 127th Street at properties across the street from 127th. Next picture. And this is the gravel drive looking west towards 127th Street. Again, the landscape berm along the south property line. Next picture. And this is looking from 127th Street down the applicant's driveway. And I can stand for any questions.
Questions for staff, Mr. Aldridge?
Yeah, I'm just curious on staff recommendations, item number 6, where it says the guest must vacate the property within 30 minutes after the event ends, and the host must vacate the property within an hour after the event ends. How are you going to enforce that?
Enforcement is complaint-based, so if excessive noise or things are happening longer than the time limits, there could be complaints filed.
And also, I got another question. It seems like 127th Street's gonna have a lot of potential extra traffic on that, and that is a gravel street right there. So is there any requirements or any plans or anything for any pavement or extra maintenance, or who's that responsibility come on with that extra wear and tear on 127th?
With this being a rented facility, this isn't an increase in daily traffic. You're going to have moments of higher traffic as an event would occur. As for the responsibility of the maintenance, whoever maintains the road at this point, whether it's a township road or county road, I'm not aware, but there is no requirement that this does not trigger a requirement for pavement.
Okay.
Any other questions? Ann?
You call the tree line along the driveway a berm with trees, but it looks to, I think of a berm as built-up dirt, and it's kind of hard with the vegetation to tell. Is it built-up dirt, or is it trees on grade with tall grasses?
No, I believe it is built up dirt. Paul, do you want to go to that picture looking south? Keep going back, looking directly south. There we go. You can see that in order for this vegetation here at the top, that's kind of grasses at the top. You can see there's an elevation change, and there's grass planted, and then the trees planted along the berm. That's okay.
All right, Mr. McKay?
I just have a clarification. You got two photos here, this photo here and this photo here.
Yes.
One of them shows the south property, not in that second building, but in the other photo, it shows it going right through the middle of it. Is that just a distortment of the picture?
Can you answer your question one more time, Mr. McKay?
Okay, in this picture, you got two pictures. This
Right,
picture
the
here,
aerial and then kind of the oblique aerial.
that
Yes.
picture shows that the south, would be the east property line is between the house and the first building. The next aerial photo you shows the property line going right through the building. That one right there. I just want a clarification is what I'm wanting.
It's probably just,
Different building.
Grass there.
yeah. No, none of these show a property line going through buildings. And if so, it's probably just a skew of the aerial related to the property lines.
Any other questions? Philip, do you recall whether there are windows or doors on the west side of this structure?
This is the south facade. That's a separate building. I honestly do not know. Pitch hitting for Brad. He was one who was on the site taking pictures. I can defer to the applicant. They would probably know if there are windows or doors on the west side.
All right, thank you. All right, are there any other questions from the commission for staff? All right, thank you, Philip. All right, will the agent or applicant please come forward? And you'll have 10 minutes, and please start with your name and address.
Vince Burnett, 3800 South, 127th Street East. Also present is my daughter, Bailey Mitchell, and my son-in-law, Joe Mitchell. We are the applicants, and I can answer your question. There is no doors on the west side of the barn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The doors are the main door and I think you'd have to look at one of the other pictures with the vehicle in the front, but there's a main garage door on the, what would be the south west corner of the barn. And there's a walk door there, and then the large garage door on the east side of the barn. There's also another walk door on the north side of the barn where there is piping. The previous owners had placed a lot of fence piping for horses because they were avid horse people. So I think the line that may have been confusing is pipe fencing. I'm not certain, but at least that answers the question. My wife and I bought this property in June off an auction, actually, and then we closed on it in July. And we bought it as a generational home. And what I mean by that is both of my adult children and their spouses and my grandchildren all live in this home. We obviously live there full time, but one of the ideas when we first envisioned when we purchased the home was it's such a great property that we thought it would be good to avail the public of this venue. It had a ball field in it. I believe the original owner of the property built the ball field. Obviously, the barn, I call it a barn because I grew up on a farm, but it's more of a shop. They used it for essentially storing equipment. The previous immediate owners stored their tractors and other stuff in there. But they had, put things like axe throwing and bay, I guess you call it, where they throw axes. And it literally had a full indoor batting cage with netting. So it was set up to some degree as far as a nice barn. This picture does show a separate from the shop barn that's the horse barn you're looking at directly. And obviously there's corrals that come out to the east side of that. But it's primarily a source for the horses to be bedded, and they have wash bay in there. They have a full bathroom. They have a full wash area for the horses. I mean, it's a fairly nice setup. Personally, I'm an attorney practicing here in Wichita. I have been for 35 years. Went to Wichita State. I went off to law school for 2.5 years, graduated, came back, and have been practicing here ever since. We moved from Tallgrass Country Club down to this property, and it was a family idea to do this. We had a discussion. We all lived in separate houses. We thought, it'd be nice after the kids had moved off, and the house is kind of empty except for my wife and I, and we thought of this being a generational home. But it's important to note that we live on the property, and obviously any conditional use, if granted by the commission, obviously we have a vested interest in maintaining quorum and controlling it to the point that we live there. My son, who also lives with us, is a police officer for Wichita Police Department, and so is his wife. So I saw in some of the neighbors' issues that full-time security they felt needed. I think we have that covered. But that kind of gives you a little bit of the idea of why we were asking for this conditional use request. We want to share it with the public and the community. I know that the neighbors think this is going to be a wedding party venue, but my daughter, who's a mental health provider in Derby, had already been approached about having a conference in the barn. So we don't envision it just as a wedding venue. In fact, that's probably not the main focus. It would be more important to avail us of some opportunities for reunions, birthday parties, corporate events, baseball fields right there, daytime events versus all nighttime events. I will say in conclusion, because I know my time is limited, but this was set previously. I got 4 minutes. All right, thank you. this was set previously 2 weeks ago. On the day of the hearing, I was contacted by counsel for the neighbors and essentially asked that we continue the hearing so we could explore possible discussions with the neighbors to reach what I thought was a compromise. What it turned out to be was a delay so they could get their case together, I believe, versus actually realistic discussions, because that was on 2 weeks ago on a Thursday. The next week, there was no activity. On Monday, this week, I received word from their counsel advising that their compromise was withdraw your application and we'll pay your application fee. No interest in discussing any potential additional conditions on the approval of the conditional use permit. And of course, they vision it as a commercial property versus a conditional use. When I said, well, obviously that's not successful, I said, or wouldn't be approved, I then heard on Wednesday, about 3 o'clock, that, well, if that proposal doesn't pass, then my clients are willing to discuss compromises. But at 5:45 yesterday, last night, evening, whatever you want to call it, I received an email that essentially had their conditions. And the first condition was for me to pave the entire 127th Street from 31st Street down to 39th Street. I haven't paved many roads lately, but I would suspect that that's probably in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $900,000 to pave a mile of county road. And obviously, that was a non-issue. I did note in their submission today that probably the commissioners have, is that's not the number one, but in the email to me last night at 5:45 p.m., that was the first condition, which obviously was not acceptable. I appreciate your time today. I'm open to any questions. I would like to reserve a little bit of time for rebuttal, if allowed.
Yes, you will be given a couple of minutes for rebuttal after we hear from other members of the public. Are there any questions for the applicant from Mr. Blick?
You were speaking about occupancy, and then your family. Do they live all inside the home, or are they also residing inside the barns?
No, the barn's not livable, but they all live in the house.
Just
we
wanted to
have-
ask that question.
Yeah, we have rooms in the west side, east side, and then upstairs. So we're fairly segregated, actually, but they all live in the house.
Okay, Mr. Green?
Has it been determined the size of events that you can have in the event center? I know that there's an equation that involves probably police, fire, size of the structure and all. Have you got any feel about what kind of occupancy you can expect in the barn, not the house?
I don't know that. I understand that's the fire marshal issue, and they set the occupancy of the barn. So I haven't got to that next step because I've spent enough time and energy on this without going the next step before we even get the conditional use request approved.
Okay, any other questions? Mr.
Are you anticipating that this is going to bring full-time income to some members of your household? In other words, is this the focus on making that event center activated a good portion of the time?
I hadn't really thought of that, but that's not the plan. They all remain fully employed outside the home, but obviously, I've been to 2 barn weddings in probably the last 2 years, friends getting married in barns. And obviously, you got to, have a website. Also, any corporate events, reunions, you got to have a website. Somebody's going to have to manage that. I can't. I'm not the computer guru that a lot of my kids are. So somebody's going to be in charge of that. But no, they're full-time employed outside the home. This is really an opportunity to share the facilities with the public.
Okay, so the intent is to have a family member manage it? You're not going to hire a manager to manage this facility full-time?
I'm hoping a family member can take care of it, but if that's not the case, then obviously we'd have somebody that had to monitor any type of website that was created and obviously manage the events. But again, we're living there. So, if you ever have an event, I'm going to be right there. So, and it's all 4 adult kids. My wife, obviously the grandgirls can't help, but, we plan to be actively, personally managing, even if somebody's running the event otherwise.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant from the commission? All right, thank you, sir. You will have a chance for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Because I'm practically certain we're going to hear from members of the public here. All right. Do any members of the public here in chambers want to speak on this item? Just organize yourself one at a time. Please come up. You'll have 3 minutes and start with your name and address, please. Please go to the podium. We can't get you on the tape if we can't get you through the mic.
Thank you. My name's Neil Gosch. I'm an attorney. I represent several of the homeowners south of the applicant's property. I would ask for 10 minutes to speak, particularly because 3 of the families are not here, and I would be using their time as well as the neighborhood association's time to represent their opposition to this. So I'd ask for 10 minutes, no rebuttal, and I probably won't even use that much.
All right, I would ask if there is agreement on the board. I'm inclined to allow it under the circumstances, but would someone care to, whoops, Mr. JR?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. I'm just looking at the bylaws real quickly just to see what the limitations and requirements are for additional time.
I believe it says that we can, either the chair or the board can extend time, but please do check because 2-minute increments?
I'll cut it short. I'll concede that it's 3 minutes per member up to 2 minutes extension, so 5 minutes per member. And I guess my difference would be I'm speaking on behalf of 3 members who are not here.
And I understand your perspective, but we're trying to agree with our own bylaws here.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's on the clock now, right?
I would say no.
would
I think that
recommend
would be
it be
very
paused
unfair.
momentarily.
We can pause the clock.
Thank you.
Okay, so the bylaws indicate that the natural saying is that the speakers are limited to 3 minutes per individual. The time for presentations may be extended by up to 2 minutes by the chair unilaterally, and may be further extended by commission by majority vote. So were the commission to entertain the 10 minutes requested, it would have to be approved by a majority vote.
All right, thank you. All right, may I ask for the commission's response on this?
I move that we allow him 5 minutes to speak.
All right,
But
Mr.
Second.
And
Blake,
discussion, yeah, discussion would just be because typically we only allow one person to speak each time. So I would definitely support.
all right, we have a motion and a second to allow 5 minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed say no. All right, sir, you have 5 minutes. The clock is running up there to help you keep track.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, my name is Neil Gosch. I represent several of the homeowners in the Twin Mills neighborhood, and I'd appreciate it if the staff would pull up the aerial view of the staff report of the photograph that we saw earlier. That would be very helpful.
All right, I think it's Paul back there, is it?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
So what you don't see in this photograph is another 11 lots located south of the subject property that are all owned and developed. Several of the people are here today, and you're going to hear them speak. History of this neighborhood is very important. I think that's one thing in the staff report you don't see. We have the actual developer here. We have the person who constructed the home that the applicant's living in. And we have the person here who constructed the barn that the applicant is in. And you're going to hear from them about what their intent was with respect to developing this property. This is the Twin Mills neighborhood. It is one contiguous plat. Block A is to the south, Block B is to the north. These 6 lots, believe it or not, are part of the Twin Mills plat. It was the intent of the developer, BAB Capital, and BAB is Brock and Amy Barron, and you're going to hear from Mr. Barron today. It was the intent that those lots all be included together as one contiguous operation neighborhood. the restriction of private property rights, right? That is the balance that we're here to discuss, is do we allow the private property owner to use their property the way we see fit versus the public need for safety, welfare on the other side? Well, here, you're gonna hear, I think, from Mr. Barron, that it was his intent that all of these lots participate in restrictive covenants. If you look up in the Register of Deeds, all of the lots south in the Twin Mills neighborhood, so Block A and then a majority of Block B, are all bound by restrictive covenants. And those restrictive covenants require no commercial use. That commercial use is, we let you use our property for a fee, right? That's a commercial use, and that's exactly what they're trying to do here. Mr. Barron owned these 6 lots originally, and he elected to opt out of those restrictive covenants, not for a commercial use, not for business purposes, but because he kept cattle. It was a violation of the restrictive covenants of the Twin Mills neighborhood to have agricultural animals on the property. So he opted out. He opted those 6 lots out of the restrictive covenants. But all of the remaining lots in the Twin Mills neighborhood are all bound by restrictive covenants. And those restrictive covenants say you can't have an event center. You can't have a commercial purpose. And it's a loophole. Mr. Barron sold the property to a horse farmer. He kept it on there, and now the horse farmer sold it to Mr. Burnett, the applicant. It's a loophole. Those 6 lots were always intended to be part of the restrictive covenants. That's the character of the neighborhood. These property owners wanted to have a quiet, peaceful, non-commercial piece of country where they could go and keep it quiet, keep the traffic low, not be subjected to parties, and raise their kids, build their pools, and live in peace. And that's what they're asking this commission to do, is to vote a recommendation of no to the county commission to not have the conditional use permit granted because of that. You're gonna hear from primarily the property owners all along the driveway of lot number 6. Lot number 6 is the driveway that leads to lot 7 where the conditional use permit is being asked to apply. And a side note, the berm is not in Mr. Burnett's control. The berm is on those private property owners' side of the property line. So it's those 5 or 6 property owners on the south that are going to be forced to maintain a tall, aggressive barrier between the loads of traffic that are coming in on lot number 6 driveway and their backyards. There may be 400 feet or 500 feet, thank you, ma'am, between the barn and their houses, but between that road and their houses, it's just dozens of feet. And between road and their property line, they're adjacent. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have one.
Mr. Aldridge?
Yes, sir, you made a comment about what the intent was on the northern portion of the property and what it is compared to the south and being, recorded. But if there's no restrictions on that property, it doesn't matter what the previous owner's intent was, it's the legality portion of it, I would think. If it's not recorded, it's not germane to the rest of that.
It's not germane legally. It's not dispositive, right? I can't go to court and get a court order stopping Mr. Burnett from doing this. Had I had those restrictions, I totally agree. And we concede that. But the issue is under the golden factors, which I know this body is intimately aware of, what is the character of the neighborhood and what evidence and information do you have to evaluate that? And I think that those restrictions and covenants that Mr. Barron originally wanted applied, but opted out because he kept cows, if he could go back and do it again, and I think you're gonna hear him testify to this, he would. He would apply the restrictive covenants to this. It was his intent as the original developer to make this a neighborhood and not allow that barn to be used as a party facility.
But he didn't do that.
He didn't do that when he sold it, that's correct.
Any other questions for the speaker? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item?
I've been voluntold to stand up and speak.
All right, 3 minutes, name and address first, please.
Brock Barron, 13550 East Twin Mill. I think Neil did a fine job describing the intent and everything else. And absolutely, and my wife tells me daily, especially since this application's been filed, that I should have opted back into the HOA covenants, but obviously I didn't, and she was right once again. But one thing I don't think Neil mentioned was, I don't want to get into an arrangement or a scenario where we're opening Pandora's box for everyone in that neighborhood. I mean, I've got several friends previous to living there have requested commercial use, and beyond that, agricultural use and things of that nature. Back to the intent. The intent is to get away from town, get away from people, get away from noise, and I think the argument here is that this just brings it all to us. So from that standpoint, I certainly am normally in this room protecting my own property rights, and I appreciate Neil's comment that it's a fine balance, and whether or not property rights versus the neighbor's rights are more important. So, but yeah, the intent is to get away. We didn't have any pictures of the neighborhood, but 100% natural grass, quail, wildlife, deers, things of that nature. All things that we are happy to have so close to town. So I would ask for a no recommendation today based on that.
Brock?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
With the mouse, could you show us where you live?
I am right there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker from the commission? All right, thank you. Are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? You know the drill by now. Name and address, 3 minutes, please.
Hello, my name is Tim Hodavi. I live at 13200 East Twin Mill Street, the closest property right here. If you can see that. I think one of the big concerns is I've heard that there are gravel streets, and I think that's I want to address that. These are not gravel streets. These are sand-based streets that kick up a ton of dust with the littlest amount of traffic. If we get the slightest bit of rain, they turn into washboards, and it's a mess to drive on a regular basis. And then the applicant's driveway is gravel, but the streets around there are not, and they get beat up and torn up. We have Southeast High School just to the north of the subdivision. That we do have traffic from students that think that these roads are fun to drive on, and it causes quite an issue. So, I think I speak on behalf of our of my neighbors that that's one of the many concerns that we have. So, I appreciate your time and consideration in this matter, and I'll answer any questions if anyone has.
Any questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Sorry, Mr. Johnson.
So the driveway going back is a private drive, is that
It's
correct?
correct.
And the nearest public street is, what, 127?
Yeah, right here. Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak? Please come up. 3 minutes, name, address. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Devon Brame, and I live at 12800 East Twin Mill Street. And it's this address right here. So we've lived there for about 8 years now. And first off, I'm a state trooper for the Kansas Highway Patrol, been employed for 20 years. And of course, my job is to protect and serve, and also to find suspicious things, protect, all of our citizens of the state of Kansas. And one of the things that I'm trained in is, to find suspicious activity. And I can tell you how many times on this road, 127th Street, that I have had to run off people having sex, had to run off people just arguing, people doing drugs. I've even had pursuit down this road a couple of times. I've arrested people on this road for DUIs. So with that being said, having an event center, you're gonna have parties. You're gonna have people, having alcohol, maybe some people maybe even doing drugs. But for the most part, it's gonna be alcohol. What do? I arrest people for DUI. And bringing this event center here around our family members, I don't think it's, it's a safety issue as far as, people partying, bringing more havoc to the area when we don't want it. We do have a lot of people, like he said, Mr. Hodavy said earlier, with Southeast High School. We deal with that all the time. I'm dealing with the public school resource officer now because before school, during their lunch period and after school, the kids come down there and do donuts right at 127th and 39th Street. In fact, one day I was taking my patrol car to the office and ended up having a wreck with one of the kids doing donuts in my patrol car. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, had a young kid roll his truck just a mile north of here. You probably can't see it up there, but he rolled his vehicle, and you can see the evidence of him doing that in the roadway. So again, bringing more havoc is not conducive to our neighborhood, and again, that's why we moved out here to kind of get away from that. So just ask that you can take that into account of what goes on and what we'll have to look forward to and face. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker?
Thank you for your service.
Yes, I don't ever said that.
Ann?
One of the neighbor suggestions was paving 127th Street, and I believe you said a whole mile. From 39th Street, which is there's
Yes, ma'am.
39th and Twin Mills, and then the entry into this property, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
39th Twin Mills to this property. If that distance were paved, that's not a full mile, that's more like a half mile?
Yes, ma'am.
And would that, in your experience as a officer, lessen the amount of hanky-panky stuff that happens on the dirt road?
I have seen it from 31st Street all the way down to 39th. It's a mile long, burnouts, squiggly lines of the fishtailing. But any would help, any of it would help. Our main issue is right there at 127th and 39th. The students come down there and just do donuts. I have a 3/4 ton truck, and driving through those ruts is just horrendous.
Done, Ann? All right, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Name, address, 3 minutes, please.
I'm Kara Hackney, and I live at 13230 East Twin Mill. And my backyard is adjacent or backs up to the applicant's property. I think probably mostly reiterate what everybody else has said. I think safety is the most important thing. We all have kids at our homes. We have drivers that are learning, and I think it was mentioned earlier that because the events weren't happening daily, that we wouldn't see extra traffic, but I don't agree with that statement. we've talked about, those of us that live there, the roads are difficult to drive, even when it is not raining or if there hasn't been rain. And so I do agree that if there was an event center put in, that the additional traffic would tear up the roads and somebody needs to be responsible for that. We've looked into wanting to have them paved and the cost is expensive, but if we're not bringing in the extra traffic, that shouldn't be on us. So I just agree with my fellow neighbors, and I think that taking into consideration safety, a lot of us have teenage drivers, and if we're bringing in more traffic, that's something that we have to deal with. So I ask that you vote no on this application.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Name, address, 3 minutes, please.
Charles Lovegren, 13521 East Twin Mill. I've been out there about 9 years. I built my house 9 years ago. I moved to the area, and it was very calm, quiet, and peaceful. Since I've been out there, the roads have deteriorated. They've not been maintained properly. Everybody keeps talking about gravel. That's a far, far stretch of what those roads are. We had an inch of rain not more than a month ago, and that 127th became a totally mud pit. And I don't know how a fire truck would ever have to get up there to get us, to provide safety for our houses. This is the first time I've seen Vince. He hasn't introduced himself to my family. So outside of that, that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? All right, thank you, sir. Any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this? Come up. You have 3 minutes. Start with your name and address, please.
My name is Thomas Boo. I live at 1113 South Bracken Circle, Wichita, Kansas, zip code 67207. So all gentlemen is the neighbor, is the twin mill, brought up the security and safety and dirt road, all that. So I'm gonna have a short statement. So I am a builder and a developer. So I own the land on the west of the right here. I just recently bought the same with the event center. The family is brought it up. So I own the land as west of the proposing is the event center. I am in the process of the platting. The land is for residential use. So I am here today to oppose against the use of event center locating to the east of the land for many reasons. But the main reason is the paving of 127. So to save time and for you is to understand my purpose for being here, I tie up my wife's hand up, hand out, all the statement is on there. You can review it. So my question and concern, and do you have any question, let me know.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you for this, sir. That's good information. Mr. Aldridge?
Just to clarify, so when you do your development up there, you're gonna have to pave part of 127th Street?
No.
Okay.
So 127, if I plat is over capacity 12 lots, so I will. But if I do if I plat 3 lots, so still under the policies that I have to pay paving. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. We're still circling around this paving discussion, and so I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification for the board right now. Part of the discussion, I believe part of what's been referred to in terms of the capacity is part of the subdivision regs, where they discuss proposed subdivisions, you know, if there are currently unpaved connections to arterial streets, then if the proposed subdivisions end up causing cumulatively more than 200 vehicle trips per day on the arterial street, then there is discussion of requirements for them to basically agree for the county to pave the road, and then the subdivider will pay the costs. Now, what I would want to distinguish today is this is not a plat before you today. This is a zoning request, and so technically this portion does not apply to your considerations today. I would recommend just in general that the golden factors be analyzed and that conditions be reasonable and based on your analysis of the golden factors.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions for the speaker?
And I apologize, my comments were not any type of speculation or comment on how this specific property would be analyzed were it to be further platted or something along those lines.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me. This is James McNall.
Yes, I can hear you. Give us your address, please, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm at 13,000 East Twin Mill Drive, just directly south, right next to the Hotties. My name is James McNall, like I said. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. We were in a funeral out in Tipton, Kansas, so we hated to miss it, but we were out there and I couldn't really control things. But the one concern I have, along with everything that's brought up today, is utilities. We do not have out there, do not have sanitary sewer, so everything is done by lagoon. So my question and concern is, what if he has 200 people out there? What's going to be done with that residential lagoon, along with multiple people living in a single family house? So that's my concern. Utility, what's going to be a requirement of that? And I honestly, if there should be something where we just don't build a bigger lagoon, I don't want to smell it. My neighbors don't want to smell it. The other thing that I would have question on is water and the usage of water, because we do have lower water pressure. We are rural. It would be something that definitely needs to be looked at. Because of all those unknown reasons, I would request that this not be approved by the commission. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Once again, I'm sorry I wasn't there. It'd be easier to, kind of show where I live and how it affects me, but I did want to bring that up.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission for the speaker? All right, seeing none, thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item? All right, hearing none, if the agent or applicant would like to come back, you have 2 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you. I did fail to mention the berm earlier. It is probably a 6 foot. It's hard to measure because it obviously goes up slow. So I don't have a surveyor stick to know how tall the berm is, but it's rather significant. Brock could probably tell you because he probably built it, but then there's trees and lots of shrubbery on there that obviously shields from the neighbors. The neighbors talked about safety, and I hate to reiterate, but we're living there. Safety is a concern for us. Obviously, we have as much concern about safety as they do. The sewer issues, since Brock's owned it, Mr. Barron, the barn and the horse area are serviced by a septic tank. I've never lifted the lid off, but they've rerouted the line that was to the barn to the lagoon, and it's now routed towards the horse barn, which has a separate septic system of its own. A lot of the discussions about the concerns on 127th, I don't think are applicable to my request for conditional use. I don't think what the Southeast High School students may do down at 39th has any impact on our conditional use. 127th is a sandy road. Our road is paved. There's prevailing wind in Kansas from the south. It's really blowing from south to north. So if there's any dirt, it would actually not come from this private road. Thank you.
Please stay by the, are there any questions for?
Is
Ann?
there also separate water, like private wells that serve the barn and the extra building, or is that tied to rural water?
It has rural water and it has two wells. One that is, I really can't show you, it's close to the house. And then there's a separate well that's over by the pond that you see in the, well, I guess I can show you here. There's another well over here because there's a windmill and there's a well underneath there. The well that's, the other well is right close to the house and it has rural water in addition.
Any other questions?
You referred to a paved road. Where is that?
I did.
Is that the driveway? And may I ask, while you were talking about this, that sort of long, narrow lot that hosts the driveway, is that your property as well?
It is.
That area right there?
This is the driveway or entrance to the property from 127th, which runs obviously north and south. This was at one point in time chipped and sealed, it looks like to me. Over time, it's deteriorated. It needs to be touched up with either chip and seal or something, but it is more paved than 127th is primarily sand. And I grew up on a farm. I grew up on dirt roads. They do get washboardy and you have to slow down. The irony is I see a lot of people coming out of the neighborhoods, even Twin Mills to the north, that drive 50 miles an hour on that road. I'm kind of particular. I like to drive slow because I might keep my car a little cleaner, but it's a sandy road on 127th for sure.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Williams Bay?
Didn't you say that you had a daughter and a son-in-law that were both police officers?
I do.
And they would be providing security?
If available. I mean, I just wanted to show their experience because neighbors raised issues with having a full-time security force when you had any kind of event. And I meant to suggest that I think they have that covered. But obviously, they have their own schedule, their own work schedule. One of them has a day job with Wichita Police Department. The other one has more of a 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. job.
Can I ask if you would be amenable to an additional condition to chip and seal or do something about that long driveway? If that was, I don't think it's going to solve the primary issue, but it might address one of the issues that was brought up.
My wife would be here clapping her hands that you said that because she wants that to be chipped and sealed as well. And, frankly, I think that would be a good idea. I can't do anything about 127th Street. If the wind's out of the west, it's going to fog into those neighbors worse than this private road would be. I can't do anything about that, but I could do that. I could chip and seal that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if this is approved, if it's approved, do you agree to the conditions that are in the staff report?
I do. I meant to talk to Brad. The weekday events ending at 6, the only thing I was wondering about because of, if it's during the summer, it's daylight and 6 o'clock seems a little bit early for weekdays, but I will accept the conditions proposed in the staff's report.
All right, Mr. Blick?
I just want to verify, you own all the other parcels also, all 6 of them?
Yes, they are, I understood that that was parceled because it was required when the twin mills to the south was created. They had to actually parcel it all out. And Brock told me that himself, but I own all these lots. They're part of 42 acres plus. And obviously, we're only asking for the conditional use on that one lot. But if we ask for conditional use of all 40 acres, I guess that's automatic, but that's not the point. The point is for this lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring it back to the board for discussion. Comments?
One thing I'm looking at this is, it is a conditional use and there's lots of requirements. If one of them conditions is not met, that this could become null and void. So I'm going along with staff to support the conditional use. That'll be my motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Bill Johnson and a second from Mr. Green. Mr. Warren, you want to comment on the motion?
I would. There's a number of things here that give me comfort with the application. One of them is the location of the owners on site. Having on-site ownership is going to take care of a lot of those problems. Our family had in effect, what was a event center between Derby and Mulvane. We had it for years. We never had to zone it because we never charged. It was just a community place that we offered for the community. And we'd have chamber functions, we'd have school functions, we'd have military base would use it. A lot of people used it. And the concerns and fears were there, but they never materialized. I just don't see that would be an issue. The traffic on 127th with suspicious activity is a result of not having enough traffic. People go to places where they think they can get by and not be seen. And if there's a lot of traffic, they're not gonna go there. So the fact that there'll be a little bit more traffic occasionally, I think would reduce the amount of suspicious activities out there. So, and I'm not concerned about the utilities. If you got water, you got sewer, you don't get a lot of use in these activities. So, I mean, it's needed, but it's not necessary to have a lot, something of a commercial grade. So I'll vote in favor of the motion.
Okay, Mr. Aldrich?
I actually have a question regarding the waiver. Is that to be taken in two separate motions? Or does your motion include that waiver?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. Were it the intent of the Commissioner, it could be moved to approve per staff comment, including a recommendation of the waiver of supplementary use regulation, section 3D6 NN7.
That would be my motion.
What he said.
That's what I seconded.
Yes, exactly. That is what we meant to say is for our motion. I would just say to the people who spoke here today, we are glad you came. We did listen to you, we did hear you, but understand that what this board does all the time is deal with development. And people move out to the country because they like it out in the country and don't want development to happen around them. But other people move out to the country because they want to be out in the country too. And it is a repetitive thing that we hear the same sorts of concerns. But we have to meet certain requirements. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion on the motion? I'll call a question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed say no. Motion is approved, 11-0. All right, our next item is 4.3, right? Yes, conditional use 2023-00048. And is Christina coming? She's on her way. Additional use in the vicinity of 127th Street East and East 39th Street South. Hi, Christina, go for it.
Hi, this is actually on 2nd and Yale. Yep.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Reith. I'm an associate planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. This is case number CON 2023-00048. The applicant is requesting a conditional use to allow an accessory apartment on a property zoned TF3 two-family residential district located at 247 North Yale. The subject site is currently developed with a 2,300 square foot single-family residential dwelling and a 440 square foot detached garage. And that existing garage would be converted into an accessory apartment. Paul, could we please go to the site plan that was submitted by the applicant? All right, the site plan shows that the accessory apartment is situated 33 feet west of the main structure, 3 feet from the southern property line, 11 feet from the west property line, and 27.5 feet from the north property line. Accessory apartments are subject to Section 3D6A of the Unified Zoning Code, which has 4 regulations. I just wanted to clarify for number 2, the appearance of an accessory apartment shall be compatible with the main dwelling unit and with the character of the neighborhood. I wrote that both structures are clad in brick, and that is incorrect. The garage is actually wood, but they are both built with traditional materials, and they were built at the same time. There are no zoning cases associated with this property. And I also wanted to make another correction on this report. I wrote that East 2nd Street North is a 2-lane one-way street, and it is a 1-lane one-way street with a bike lane. And it also has sidewalks on each side. The proposed use is in conformance with the Community Investments Plan. When we take a look at the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, it identifies the site as new residential, which the plan defines as areas of land that will likely be developed or redeveloped by 2035 with uses predominantly found in the residential category. The requested zoning or conditional use aligns with the goals with the Wichita Places for People plan. The conditional use aligns with Strategy 5, provide a diversity of housing options to attract new residents and allow existing residents to remain in the established central area. The small-scale development would provide housing options that otherwise might not be immediately available in the area. It also aligns with Strategy 6, encourage infill and redevelopment that is contextual to the environment in which it is occurring. The conditional use would allow for the infill of an additional dwelling unit using an existing structure. Based upon the information that was available at the time the staff report was prepared, staff is recommending that the conditional use be approved subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report. This recommendation is based on the golden rules that we all abide by. I'll just skip ahead to the last golden rule here, opposition or support of neighborhood residents. So at the time that the report was prepared, we did not receive any comments regarding the conditional use. That has since changed. I distributed a packet of comments, some of which were for the previous case and some of which were for this case. And I believe we have some folks here who will speak on this item. And with that, I will go to the site photos. This is looking west towards the main structure. Next slide, please. This is looking south. We can see the brick main house and the wood garage. Next slide, please. This is looking north away from the site across East 2nd Street. Next slide, please. And this is looking east away from the site across North Yale Avenue. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions for Christina from the board? Ann?
Christina, this is an area where it is really hard to park just because of that one lane and the bike and the traffic through that area. Mm-hmm. So does this still comply with the number of parking spaces required for the residential if the garage is no longer a place that a car can park in?
Yeah, so it's 1 parking space per single-family dwelling unit and then 1 parking space per accessory apartment.
So there'd still be 2 spaces
that
on
can
the
park
drive?
in the driveway.
Okay,
that's
right.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you, Christina. All right, lost my place on my cheat sheet. Will the agent or applicant please come forward? State your name and address, please.
My name's Nancy Barabee, and my current address is 4601 East First in College Hill. And I will be living in this house, and then the accessory apartment will be converted as an accessible living area for my daughter, who is a paralyzed wheelchair user. It's very difficult in College Hill, and we've lived in College Hill for 12 years now. It's very difficult in College Hill to find a dwelling that is wheelchair accessible, let alone one that is specifically made, this one will be to her specific needs. You can see that the garage currently is in rather poor condition, and so it will be, when it's redone into an apartment, the same basic structure, the same basic look will be there, but it will not be looking like it's falling apart. Since I bought the house in May, we have, you may not be able to tell, but we've done an immense amount of cleanup, and by the time we're finished, it will be an asset to the neighborhood. But like I said, the main goal is to give my daughter a little extra space, a little extra independence, but still be close enough to me. And are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there, Ann?
So
and then
Claire,
Mr.
it
Aldridge.
will not be a two-story.
It will not be
remain a
two-story,
single?
no,
Okay.
there's no, she can't go up the stairs.
Got it.
Okay, Mr. Aldridge?
You're gonna have sewer and water.
That I was to understand that the water and sewer is to come off the main house. It will not be a separate water and sewer, but it will be, I will live in the main house, she will live in the accessory apartment. It will just be the two of us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? All right, thank you. All right. Are there any members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
May I request one additional moment? 1 minute, please.
Yes, I think
probably
I
won't
can do
use
that
it. I just
unilaterally,
wanted-
so 4
My name's
minutes?
Jess Greenleaf. I live at 248 North Clifton, adjacent to the garage. Nancy, I appreciate you reading some of my concerns. You've taken care of many of the concerns. I originally was going to, I've been there since 1999, and I was going to protest and request a delay for approval. The reason is because the neighborhood residents did not have or do not have an accurate site build plan. And when I talked to Christina and asked about that, whether it was a single story or a 2-story, which I understand now, single story, thank you very much, and whether it was going to be confined within that without having a site plan or a drawing, confused a lot of us locals as to what was going to go on there. Now that I know that it's conditional use for the garage only, I'm assuming, and no change to the existing home at 247 North Yale, I'm assuming. My concerns were, we have a Frank Lloyd house, historical house, just down the block. We also have another historical house to the west, and we did not want to have our properties devalued, obviously. And the garage also in question sits on a utility easement. And so we were actually looking at, was there a vacation request in reference to whether they were going to build outside of the current structure? And I think that's been answered. Thank you very much. The other item, there was a little talk in the neighborhood that there could be a carport structure in front of the garage. I would like to have some extended communication about that, if there is, and how that would fall within the setback into the easement, and whether there'd have to be a vacate to that to have that, and would it actually enhance the College Hill area, because there's not many carports there. One other thing is the water drainage. We were concerned about if there was any damming along, depending on the construction or what she did. We have water that runs down through that easement from our properties, and we didn't want a damming situation where it was ingressing onto a couple of our properties. And I think that answers if you're not going to build anything into that easement. The other thing as to parking was brought up across the street at 3612 North 2nd. That single dwelling was changed into a multi-dwelling, and it has been a nightmare. There are right now normally 4 to 5 cars, as you know, that park along the south side of that, and some of them don't have tags or parked backwards. And the property currently has a no work order posted from the, I guess, a city inspector, and there is an illegal basement that's been posted also on that property. And we kind of just wanted to get away from that type of what I would call hoopla in the neighborhood. There was one thing that I guess I am not that concerned about was, it says in here on page 3, number 2, that they have to have a plan, include a plan of review, but no plans had been submitted in terms of the construction. That was our big concern. That, am I over?
Seconds.
Got 10 seconds. Anyway, that, I think you've answered my questions satisfactory, and I'm looking forward to being a great neighbor. But I had to ask that. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public here in chambers? Or, excuse me, are there any questions for the speaker from the commission? All right, are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, are there any members of the public attending virtually who would like to speak on this item? All right, then can we have the applicant back for her 2 minutes of rebuttal?
I think Jess is happy with what was said. I don't really think there's anything else I need to say, except that I'm the mail carrier in this neighborhood. I know this neighborhood intimately, and there is nothing that I'm going to do to change the character of the neighborhood, to change the feel of the neighborhood. I'm also well aware of the situation across the street, and I'm not sure what we can do about that. But we will be parking our cars off the street all the time, and we do have parking spots on Yale that if people are visiting, they can come use. So I don't foresee parking as an issue.
All right, thank you. Mr. Aldridge?
Yes, ma'am, thank you for coming. Do you agree and support the staff recommendations and comments?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. All right, back to the commission for discussion.
I'd move for approval with staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Joe Johnson and a second from Mr. Aldridge to approve per staff recommendations. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed say no. Motion carries. I believe we're still 11-0. Are we? All right. I would note, because I forgot to say earlier, that there is no BZA meeting today because we have no cases. And having said that, let's move on to item 5.1.
Madam Chairman, can I also speak on that before we get started?
Sure.
I wanted to point out that the information in the agenda report doesn't appear to be accurate. I want to refer you back to the staff report where it says the purpose of this is for the commission to approve the resolution finding that the proposed stadium project hotel plan for the city's adopted West Bank redevelopment district is substantially consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan the agenda says to approve the plan. We're not really approving the plan. We're just looking at the plan to determine if it's substantially compliant with the comprehensive plan. I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I was going to, I have little notes in red here that our task here today is not to approve or disapprove this. It's to determine whether it is in compliance with the comp plan. So just so everybody has that straight, Mary, go.
Mary Hunt, planning staff, and Jeff just stole my line. That's what I was getting up here to explain the difference between the agenda and the actual staff report and what's before you today. So with that, I will introduce Mark Elder. He's a development analyst with the Economic Development Office for the city, and he's going to go over this stadium hotel project plan for you. Okay.
No, he actually has more than 10 minutes.
I probably don't need 10 minutes, but we can take as long as you wish to have today. So, as Mary said, Mark Elder, I'm a development analyst with Development Services in the City Manager's Office. And I thought just because sometimes TIF does not come to commission very often, I would just do a high-level overview of tax increment financing. Overall, as Jeff had said, for the commission, it's really just to consider whether the plan that's been proposed is consistent with the comprehensive plan. But tax increment finance is a tool. It's been used around the country, but it's used to finance revitalization of designated targeted areas. One of the key things to remember with tax increment financing is it does preserve the tax base. So all the taxing jurisdictions are protected for what their taxes are today. However, the new taxes that are generated from the development are actually used to be reinvested back into that project area to pay for eligible redevelopment costs. The financing it can be used as pay-as-you-go or bonded if the city wishes to go bonded. However, the city typically goes with the pay-as-you-go so as to put the onus and risk on a developer. Okay. Just wanted to show a really quick model of how tax financing works. You can see is in the kind of the blue-purple area there how the base is protected, but over the 20 years of a TIF project, you can see that the tax value grows slowly in the first few years as you have that development occurs, but then once that project is complete, the tax value goes up, and then at the end of those 20 years, you have in green there that new valuation that contributes to all those taxing jurisdictions. So the project plan that was presented to the commission today is part of the West Bank redevelopment district. And so this map actually shows you the entire redevelopment district for the West Bank. However, the project plan today I'll show you on this slide here is strictly for the McLean River project area, if I can. Which is just along the river there, highlighted here in the dashed lines, but it's part of that overall redevelopment district.
Hey, Mark, you'll just need to tell Paul to change the slide. You can just say, like, next slide.
Next slide. Sorry, that's why I'm struggling here.
It's controlled in the back. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, the next slide, please. And this is a site plan that shows the plan development by the developer, where you have the mixed-use multifamily site on the, I guess, the northwest corner of Maple and McLean, kind of southeast of the stadium. And then on the other side of McLean is the hotel site. So that's the primary catalyst of where the TIF is going to be generated from that development. But then the increment is going to be used to make the improvements along there, as well as it has the potential to provide investment for improvements along the river from Maple all the way to Douglas. Next slide, please. And so the development that was on that previous site plan does include the construction of approximately 155 key hotel on the east side of McLean, and then a mixed-use 150-unit apartment complex, as well as ground floor retail space on the west of McLean, but it also includes a 260-stall parking structure. I believe that's actually that is the plan as presented. I'm here to answer any questions and seek your approval on this being consistent with the comprehensive plan.
I have a question.
Mr. Aldridge?
the relationship to the parking garage, is that gonna be a pay to park, or is that gonna be open all to the general public? And also, you're looking at 260 stalls. How was that going to affect the ballpark as far as those who have suites and also clubs? Because they're allowed up to 4 parking spots per suite.
And correct, and as you probably saw from that site plan, that the parking garage does encroach partially onto the existing parking lots that's used by the suite owners. But actually, there's agreement with the ballpark that the displaced parking spaces that were part of that will be included in the garage.
Okay, and I hope that with that parking, that the consideration would also be on top of those who have the suites and the clubs, that there's a more emphasis also on handicap parking. It's well under.
Second.
Right now.
Okay. And I'll make sure as they plan that they have that discussion. I do know that the garage overall will be open to the public, whether or not the structure, as far as free to the public, paid to the public, will be worked through. But it will be a public garage, as accessible, and I'll make sure that they include consideration for the accessible parking for handicap.
I just think that there needs to be, if you're going to have parking for the ballpark in the parking garage, it needs to be dedicated for those that you kick out, basically, for the development. But, I think right now, if they was to double the handicap parking, I'm not sure if that'd even be enough.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Williams-Bay?
Yeah, in the staff report, it says 15,000 square foot of retail space. And in the comprehensive financial feasibility study in the development plan, it says 10,000. So is it 10 or 15?
It's a minimum of 10,000, so I think that's probably where just the miscommunication was. Is it's at least 10,000 square feet, but 10 to 15.
Okay. Ms. Fox?
Since this is being proposed with TIF financing, are there specific requirements of the developer that meet other community needs? For example, love that you're adding an apartment complex, but will some of those be priced at a point that would be meeting affordability needs for our community, like the young talent we want to keep here, or the medical students? Will there be provisions that have to be met?
There is an existing agreement with the developer on how that will be built, and I don't have all the details in front of me right now. I believe it's primarily proposed to be market rate, but that's, I guess.
Will there be a public hearing about the TIF aspect of this, or how does that part happen?
Excellent question. So this is actually the first step along the process for the use of a project plan. So the first step is bringing to the Planning Commission for consideration of whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Following that, then it goes to City Council, where the council is then asked to set a public hearing. And so at the public hearing is when they will actually have the consideration for that plan, including the public hearing on that.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, what we're talking about today is just to approve the TIF, that the project as a whole will undoubtedly come back to us in more mature form at some point. Is that correct assumption?
I don't believe so.
Don't
Unless
think so.
there are other planning relatives. It's the commission is to make sure that the plan that's being presented to the city council is consistent with the comprehensive plan. At that point, it goes to the city council for their consideration on whether or not to adopt that plan.
Okay.
I think page 4 of our packet identifies specifically what the recommended action should be for this, and it has nothing to do with the TIF itself. But thank you for the re-education on the TIF.
Thank you.
Where's the, I don't see it on here without getting into site plan stuff, but where's the parking structure going? Is it off of Sycamore? Is it on the river? Where's it going?
No, it's actually incorporated with the apartments on the northwest side of Douglas and McLean. So the mixed-use multifamily site will have the parking garage incorporated within it.
Douglas and McLean, or?
I'm sorry, Maple and
Thank you.
All right, any other? Mr. McKay, somebody, anybody?
I move that we take the recommended action as found on page 4 of our agenda packet.
Second.
All right, I'm sorry, who said seconded? Up. All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Green and a second by Mr. Joe Johnson to approve as per recommended action on page 4. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say no.
Nay.
Up, so we have one no. Are there still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 1. Motion passes. Are there any other matters that we need to discuss?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that I made last week, but I was ruled out of order because it was a second motion, second substitution motion. But I'd like to make a motion
Ms.
that,
Fox and Mr. McKay, can we, hey, folks, can we please pay attention? We have some,
I'm
Mr.
making a
Johnson?
motion that we allow virtual attendance of the members of the commission, the same as the city and county do.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
break in here, but I've got to justify my salary some way. For an off-agenda item, the bylaws say that there needs to first be a motion to authorize the motion that Mr. Johnson just made. So there needs to be a motion to approve an off-agenda item. It's a majority vote of the members. And if that's then approved, then it would be appropriate for Mr. Johnson to make the motion.
All right, thank you. Would someone care to make a motion to allow an off-agenda item for discussion?
I make a motion to approve an off-agenda item for discussion.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Blick and a second from Mr. Williams Bay to approve an off-agenda item for discussion. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say no.
No.
All right, so I believe that was 3 against. Ms. Fox, McKay, and Aldrich? 8-3? All right, therefore, sorry, it's been a long week. All right, Mr. Johnson, you're up.
So my motion was to allow virtual attendance of the commission to our meetings, as is the case with the city and county meetings.
All right, we have a motion. Do we
City
have a
council and
second?
county commission.
Do we have, and is this for MAPC and committee meetings?
Yes.
All right, do we have a second? I will second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Are you including that the public can also then participate virtually?
Not as.
Okay, then
as you
I can't support it, because if
as you
we
can't.
allow us and, okay.
You can't with the city and county either.
My concern, and
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we deny. Again, if it's worth hearing the case, I think it's worth people to be here in public. And I just don't think that the virtual thing, I think it's ran its course. And I just think that you volunteer to serve on these boards and these committees, and I think that's part of it. I think you need to be here in order to do that.
all right, do we have a second?
Madam Chairman, that is the current position at this time, so I don't think you need a substitute motion to retain it. It would,
Yeah.
and, it's already what it is, so I think we're okay.
All right, and we don't have a second anyway. So I believe we go back to the original motion. I will say, one of the issues that has come up since this was voted on at the last MAPC meeting was the problems on committees. On advanced plans, we're squeaking by with barely a quorum, and it would be easier to get our committees to be able to operate efficiently if we had the option, at least, for members to be able to attend virtually.
I think there's also an option for alternates to be identified and then notified in advance that there might not be a quorum for either subdivision or advanced plans. And then those alternates could be in attendance for, in this case, advanced plan meetings.
That requires everybody who's not going to show up at a meeting to actually notify the chair before they don't show up, which unfortunately doesn't happen very regularly. Mr. Williams-Fay, you were going to comment?
What happens when you have an individual that wants to be part of the meetings but is either ill or injured and can't come?
Then they can't come, and at our current no virtual attendance policy, they can't participate.
This body's been operating for years and, without the virtual thing, and it's done pretty good for a lot of years. And I don't care about what the culture is, this, that, and the other. This board is established for a reason. And, again, if that important, that you're gonna serve on these boards, you gotta be able to serve in person on the boards and not sitting at home or virtual or your office or whatever. You need to be here. And, the same thing with staff, same thing with the applicants or the agents, or anybody that wants to rebuttal or speak for something in favor of it. I just believe it's very important that you're here live and not with Memorex.
I think the other thing about being live, it's easier to control it. When you got people calling in on the phone, they just keep talking because there's no way you can really shut them up unless you hang up on them. But just like an example today, an attorney gets up and wants 10 minutes. We give him 5 because he was representing all those people. He reached over there and every one of them got up and said something. So that's why we got to stick to our rules.
Yes, but times do change, folks, and so does technology, and we don't keep doing the same things the same way forever. It's a matter of whether this is a good idea in and of itself or not whether it's something new. Mr. Johnson?
What I really was trying to get at was, I don't think it should be unlimited amount of time. I mean, I'd be in favor of limiting the number of times that you could participate virtually. Just like when I was reappointed to this, 2 members of the county commission were not there, but they were virtual. And because of a conference, things could happen to individuals where you can't be here, but I don't think it should be a habit. I just think it should be something that occurs once in a while. So I'd be willing to, in my motion, to limit the number of times to say 3 per year that you could actually attend virtually.
How are you gonna police that?
Very easily. We take attendance. Huh?
We do that anyhow.
That's what I'm saying. We do it, and it would be very easy to keep track of that.
I don't want my comment to be misinterpreted. I'm all in favor of having virtual commissioner participation if we also allow virtual public participation. I think the rule has to be the same for all. And I do believe technology's gotten better. It is more complicated to manage, but I don't think it's impossible. And I feel like we've learned a lot from the ability of technology to allow us to participate actively and remotely. So if you're included both, then I would be in favor.
And I'm gonna ditto that because I feel like I shouldn't have a special privilege as a commissioner that the public doesn't have. And I'm not here for me. I'm here to do what's in the best interest of the community that we serve. And so I wouldn't be able to support that either. I do think that times have changed. I don't think virtual's going away ever. I think it's here. I think eventually we will have to change along with the world, but that's where I'm at.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you revised your motion and I didn't revise my second because I am now listening to Ann and Cindy and thinking that there's now some confusion in my mind about what we ought to be doing. Personally, I would like to see virtual continue the way we had. I thought it was working. Yes, occasionally there's a problem with control of a meeting, but that means the chairperson needs to exert some more control. That I think we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater by just ignoring the option that virtual participation provides to the community at large and to the efficient function of the board and these committees. So, I don't think I am going to approve my second.
I didn't make that as a motion. I just was having discussion.
Okay, so we're still back on the first motion.
Well, something else you're forgetting too. Remember we had that little glitch?
Yes, and that we had one. I mean,
But
yes,
it can happen.
it can happen.
Definitely happen.
Yes, but
And I think we've been fortunate it's only happened once, but
And your car can break down too.
that can sure cause a lot of problems.
I agree with Mr. Johnson's comment. Your car can break down, but that doesn't mean we all stop driving or go back to horses and buggies.
The meeting I was talking about.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I believe we can vote on it. I will say, I do think that this issue needs more discussion and needs to be addressed again at some point, possibly not as the last item on an agenda, because the people who are opposed to it seem to be very passionately opposed, but there's a lot of us who are very passionately in favor. And unfortunately, we seem to be about evenly divided. Perhaps we can try for a while to go back to the old way and see what kind of public response we get when the public realizes that they can't participate virtually anymore. But I do think this issue is going to come back periodically.
I would certainly like to hear from the public as far as what their preferences are.
All right, is there any more discussion? And I'll call the question otherwise. Mr. McKay?
After what you just got through saying, why don't we think about this? We just passed this to do without.
I know.
Last meeting.
It's by 6 to 5 vote and 2 people weren't there, you know?
Well, I wasn't there. I would have voted against it, but that's here or there. Well, that's no excuse.
Thanks for staying home. Thanks for staying home.
No. And so what I'm saying, what we talked about this morning in advanced plans, maybe let's, like you just got through saying, let's don't jump off and vote on something right now. Let's let it try for a period of time and then bring it back up if it's not working right. Or critique what we're doing and,
Okay, well, I think we either have to vote or the motion has to be withdrawn, one of the two.
or we can defer it. I can make a second motion to
I
defer.
would really rather not defer any more motions,
I
but
agree.
yes. All right. Mr. Johnson, would you care to withdraw your motion or shall we go ahead and vote on it? I think we know how it's going to go, but we can try.
I think we should go ahead and vote.
All right, I'm calling the question. The motion is to allow virtual participation for planning commission members for both the MAPC meetings and the committee meetings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Let's just do a roll call. I know we're going to need one.
Okay, Foster,
Aye.
McKay,
Would you please repeat what you said?
The motion is to approve virtual participation for planning commission members only.
Nay.
Green,
Nay.
Bill Johnson.
Nay.
Blick.
Aye.
Fox.
Nay.
Warren.
Aye.
Joe Johnson.
Aye.
Miles.
Nay.
Aldrich.
No.
Williams Bay.
Yes.
6-5 again, I believe. The nays
So-
have it. Correct?
Nays 6, ayes
5 yeses, 6 nos.
Yes, so the motion fails. All right, any other matters before we adjourn?
I want
All right.
to
Yeah.
make an off-agenda comment. I know John was involved several years ago when we had a planning director that was really hard on commercial development, and he came up with a Southwest Commercial Development Plan, and we had all these hearings. And all these neighbors come in and complained about, well, I built my house and there was a open field behind it and now it's not there, and on and on and on. Every meeting we went to, and I'll never, ever forget, one of the last meetings we had, everybody was getting up and complaining or had their issues. And I don't know if anybody knows Mrs. Neville, but between the Nevilles and the Dugans, they own West Wichita. She got up and said, if we wouldn't have sold any of our farm, none of you people would be in this meeting because there wouldn't be houses. And she sat down, never had another meeting. That plan went south instantly. Everybody ought to hear that and say, well, I don't want that in my backyard.
All right, any other comments? Meeting adjourned. Everybody.